What's going on, guys? Welcome back to NolanTCG, and we are back here today with another deck profile, and this time it is for my top 3, or my 3rd place, I guess, Dragonmaid list that I played at our Wintermat Championship at our locals this past Sunday. Basically what we did over the course of the next few, I think weeks or months, we're going to be doing like a Wintermat for those return to duel mats. So we're running more of a proper regional style tournament with everyone from our locals. Pretty much everyone showed up for this locals event, to the point where we hit the cap of people that's allowed in the store. So it was a very competitive event. Everyone was there playing their best decks. And yeah, ultimately we took down 3rd. For our matchups, round 1 was against, I really should have written this down, but round 1 was against Evil Twin Eldritch. 2-0'd that one. The control stuff came in really well in that game. Round 2 was against, that was Shadol. Overall, massive grind game. Ended up winning in time. Yeah, overall, very good matchup. That one was quite tense. I thought I was going to lose for a while there. And then I think if my opponent had enticed their own attack position, the Ecclesia. Yeah, if they enticed their own Ecclesia, they probably would have won, but they left the Ecclesia in attack mode. I just went into battle phase, attacked over it, main phase 2, set up my board and won. Then round 3 was against Invoked Dogmatica. Again, tense match. Ended up grinding it out in the end. What came in clutch in that match? I guess just the control aspects came in clutch with that, where we just recycled everything every turn. Game 2 in that match, we ended up getting hit pretty bad on our X-Drive, so we were just essentially playing bounce control, and we just starved our opponent out of resources. Round 4 was our only loss. That was against 60 card Shadol. That was the 2nd place list. You'll see that up on the channel on Friday. That was 60 card Invoke Shadol Eldritch. And then in the final round, we won against PK. Yeah, that one I just kind of figured out pretty early that bounce the normal summon and then bounce whatever their follow-up summon was just kind of game. But yeah, before we do get started on the profile, please remember to drop down below and hit that subscribe button if you are new here, because we're always happy to have new people. And let's get on into the profile for this one. We will be going through side deck this time. Okay, so starting us off, the best card in the deck, your primary normal summon. Well, I guess you do have a few primary normal summons, but this is the best one. 3 copies of Chamber Dragonmaid, just searches all your spells and trap cards. Depending on your hand, you just kind of judge what you need to do. Chamber is just really good though. It facilitates so much. You're summoning it every turn, getting resources. You do want to be careful not to out-resource yourself, but as I found, felt I needed to grind things out a bit more with the trap-based version of this deck, I was using Chamber to search tidying a lot more instead of using the tidying dump off Parlor. So yeah, adding the tidying and using the bounce to interact with the opponent a lot more, and then saving the summon for my turn instead of trying to summon on the opponent's turn came up a lot better, and I felt as though that was probably optimal for the chamber usage in this version of the deck. Next off, we've got 3 copies of Parlor. Again, very good card. Foolishes your stuff. Everything has good grave effects, so just kind of sets up all your combos. You foolish the fusion, or you foolish the tidying, gets you board presence or gets you to the fusion. Next off, we have cut this down to 2. I'm not sure if this was 2 in the last list that we did, but it is 2 copies of Kitchen Dragonmaid. Add, discard, gets you kind of what you need, can fill your grave up for recursion later. Really good card. And then finally for the little maids, we're playing just 1 copy of Nurse. Just Monster Reborn, can add tempo into the game when you're really ready to start pushing through some big damage and taking the game away from your opponent. The Nurse comes in clutch, but you do only need to play 1 because you don't want to open it in your opening hand. I know at one point I opened Nurse to Ernest in one of my matches, and I was just kind of this is going to be rough. We ended up pulling through, but it did take a lot of use from our back row to be able to get us to a draw that was sufficient. I think it was a chamber, and then we just kind of snowballed from there. Into the big dragons though, we are playing 5 big dragons. 3 copies of Ernest is what we're going to start off with here. The quick effect to summon from hand is just the best of the Dragonmaid effects, so we are just playing the 3 copies of Ernest. It does get you to board presence, which gets you to Heraldic Seals. Really good card. Then we have 1 copy of Lawpaw. You'd never really use the effect to negate, but, you know, it comes up. Again, like I always say, if this card was a quick effect, this card would be meta. Next off, we've got 1 copy of Tintek to round out our dragon lineup. Overall, just honest, gets you over a lot of things. I believe this card facilitated game more than once on the day, so Tintek, very good card. For our hand trap lineup, we played 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird. Was really, really good because Invoked is very, very popular at my locals still, like Invoked Dogmatica and things like that. Even like the Shaddoll lists were playing Invoked. Also then hits Drytron. Like at my locals, this card puts in so much work. Salamangreat ended up winning the event, so this probably wouldn't have put in much effort against them. But yeah, Droll and Lockbird comes in clutch. Next off, we've got 3 copies of Ghostbell and the Haunted Mansion. Ghostbell, good card. Again, just fertility, like, hits a lot of stuff in my current meta. So you can't really go wrong with it. Then we get into the spells. 3 copies of Dragonmaid Hospitality. Summons from hand, summons from grave, gets the Foolish. The only bad thing is this card can be ashed and belled. Like, it's a bit rough. Although, like, a lot of people at my locals had cut Ash previous to the event. Ash was a lot more prevalent at this event, so I did get Ash quite a lot. Normally it wasn't on the Hospitality, which is good, because the Hospitality resolving still manages to facilitate a lot of stuff. There was one game, I think it was in my round 2 matchup against Shaddolls, in which my opponent did save the Ash for the Hospitality, and that hurt a lot. He then took that game because of that. So resolving this card is very important, especially if you're not summoning Chamber. Like, if you're summoning other ones than Chamber, and this is able to get the dump as well, it just gets you so much advantage in the mid-game, so that this card is pretty important to resolve. Next off, we've got 2 copies of Dragonmaid Changeover, following that up. The reason I play 2 is because, like, stuff that can Crow effects, like, stuff that, like, DD Crow effect type effects, are very prevalent in my locals at the moment. Everyone's kind of figuring out how to hit this deck in its graveyard focus, so playing the 2 copies of Changeover became pretty important. I know there was at one point where I knew my opponent had the ability to send the Aerial in a Shaddoll matchup, and I had a Dragonmaid Changeover in grave, but I had one in hand. I had one in hand, and I knew that I wanted to bait the Aerial now, so I summoned a Parla, dumped the Changeover, and then my opponent did the play to send the Aerial, and then hit this, and then I was like, okay, activate the one from hand. And it shocked them, and then it was an easy kind of progression through the game state from there, and we really set up a dominant position. Next off, this card will change in the future, but it is 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. This morning I did buy my 3 copies of the new card, new pot, I can never remember what, Prosperity. I did buy 3 copies of Prosperity this morning, so this will probably change to a 3 Prosperity, 1 Extravagance ratio. Just the fact that Prosperity lets you choose the 6 cards you're banishing is really good in this deck. As I said, like, there was, I think, 2 or 3 points today where I did extrav away, like on the day, sorry, that I did extrav away a lot of important resources, so extrav just gets very risky in this deck. It's very unlikely that you will rip all of your resources that are good. At one point, though, I did extrav away 5 fusion monsters, and it was rough, so then we were just playing, like, bounce control for the entire time, and my opponent, like, kept holding resources to try and, like, get rid of the changeover once I had it, but I was like, I'm never going to use this changeover because it can't resolve, so yeah, I was just playing control at that point with, like, the bounces and big attacks, and we managed to pull it through. But yeah, the extrav just gets very, very risky, so this will become a 3-1 ratio in the future. Next off, we've got 2 copies of the World Legacy Guard Dragon. This card facilitates your Dragon Link combo if you open it, so it's just a very, very good card. Opening this plus another extender to get one on board allows you to pretty much get access to your entire deck, which is why we're playing 2 of it. I'm not playing 3 of it because it is a hard once per turn and you don't want to see multiple, just 1 is enough. Then we play 1 copy of Monster Reborn. This is what I've switched out for the 3rd copy of World Legacy Guard Dragon, simply because this card isn't a hard once per turn. Anytime in this deck that you see a way to summon something back to the field, that's a Heretic Seal. So, like, playing multiple ways to do that is important, which is why we played 1 copy of Monster Reborn, as well as the World Legacy Guard Dragons, just because I felt that the 3 was better. Playing a 2-1 ratio was better than just playing 3 World Legacy Guard Dragon. Next off, another Monster Reborn effect, but also the first effect is quite crazy. 3 copies of Dragonmaid Tidying. I know when I came up against my opponents who weren't super knowledgeable of how Dragonmaids worked, the fact that I'd, like, set this and bounce a card, they'd be like, oh, that's not too bad. And then, like, on the next turn, it's like, okay, yeah, cool, I can now use the other effect to summon. It was just incredible. It really caught them out of nowhere, and then they realized that, like, they should probably be, like, using Crow effects to get rid of this as well. It never did quite click to them that it was, like, a hard once per turn that you could do either or. Like, I'd always make sure to tell them that, but, like, they'd always wait till the next turn to try and Crow it, and it's like, okay, well, now I can use this effect, so, effect? Then, yeah, that just comes through really, really well. 3 copies of Solemn Strike follows that up. I felt it, Solemn Strike over Judgment in the main deck was important, simply because paying half your life is pretty bad in the current format. Like, I did side the Judgment, and it's a perfectly good card, but I felt like in the main deck, I wanted to have more control focus in the opening, where I wasn't paying massive amounts of life points to, like, kind of threaten my opponent to just find a way to get over me. A lot of people playing Droplet, which is kind of rough, because you don't want to get, like, your Heretic Seal dropleted after you've Judgmented. Well, I suppose you can just Judgment the Droplet. Look, we just played Solemn Strike in the main deck. We're just going with that. Negates monster effects, which are really prevalent in the current format, which is why we went with the Solemn Strike. Then the final cards in the main deck were 3 copies of Ice Dragon's Prison. It's overall just a massive powerhouse card. If you're playing any control variant of most decks, you should probably main decking the Ice Dragon's Prison at the moment, which is the reason why I chose it in the main deck. But let's switch over to the extra deck. Okay, next off in the extra deck, this is an extra build, so you're not going to really see any massive surprises here. 3 copies of Dragonmaid Shiu is what starts us off though. Your negation allows you to get the Reborns as well, which is really good. Just a great card. Like, this card is what makes this deck as good as it is right now, so 3 copies of Shiu is very important. Again, Captain Obvious, 3 copies of House Dragonmaid. It's an extra build. Ideally, you need to have, like, 3 of this. Surprisingly, if you extra away, like, 2 Shiu and 2 Shiu and no House, you can just, like, keep resolving the 1 Shiu to get the houses back, which is, like, good. There was one matchup, I think it was in my first round against the Eldritch Evil Twin player, where I only had 1 Shiu and 1 House, so I'd kind of go back and forth with, like, the Shiu, summon the House, and then, like, burning my own bounces to get the House back if it was going to be popped. So, like, it was just kind of the way I had to play it out to be able to keep being able to use the Shiu negate. It was a little rough, but we got through in the end. Next off, 2 copies of Heretic Seal of Heavenly Spheres. This should be 3, but I don't own 3. In fact, one of these is borrowed. If you have them, I need them, so hit me up. I can just never find them. Like, I've posted on the Facebook groups asking for them, no responses. eBay Australia, none on there. You can only find Japanese copies, so this is, like, really hard kind to find in Australia for some stupid reason. But yeah, 2 copies of Heretic Seal is what's here. Next off, we're playing 2 copies of Striker Dragon and 1 copy of Almirage. You can probably switch this for 3 Striker Dragon, or if, like, this will probably just get cut, the Almirage, when we switch over to playing the version of this build with the new pot spell. So, like, it's not super important to have the Almirage. I just kind of, like, felt as though in some positions it was good, which is the reason why it's there, really. Although, to be fair, there was times when I extraved away my Strikers and wanted to go in the Heretic Seal play, and I couldn't with the Almirage, so I had to kind of go an awkward way to play it out. So, like, this probably should just be 3 Striker Dragon. Don't listen to anything that I've just said. 3 Striker Dragon is correct. The only time this ever is sort of good is if you have, like, good arrows. You have, like, a good kind of theory on how you're going to set up your Bard Dragon plays, but even then, this is probably incorrect. So just cut this. Cut this card. Next off, we've got 1 copy of Pisty and 1 copy of LP. We're running in circles through this profile, contradicting ourselves as we talk on more and more. But 1 copy of Pisty, 1 LP is all you really need. You don't have the space to be playing 3 and 3 of each. Resolving the effects isn't super important. It's only important if you're trying to, like, really get all your resources out there onto the board. That's when, like, your 1 Pisty, 1 LP, being able to resolve the whole thing is incredible. Rounding out the main deck, or the extra deck, sorry, is 1 copy of Nightmare Phoenix. Just facilitates pops. There'll be times in the mid to late game where you just don't have a use for certain cards that you draw. I know in one match, I don't know how I won it, but I drew Extrav off Extrav both times I activated it. It was the match where I hit 5 fusions on the first go. So I was like, okay, I'm kind of screwed here. And then I top decked the Extrav and I was like, okay, let's go again. Like, it's still not, like, bad. And then I ended up being able to still keep a Heretic Seal in the extra, which was, like, absolutely incredible. Really came in clutch. In that case, the Nightmare Phoenix then also came in clutch because I had the 3rd Extrav that was, like, completely useless that I could just discard away off the Phoenix. So yeah, even in those situations as well, the fusion spell does also become, like, super, like, useless. So it is a good Phoenix target for discard. And then 1 copy of Moral Sword Dragon rounds out our extra deck. I didn't make this once all day because you are pretty big in what you summon. I would honestly consider turning this into a copy of, what's the card? turning it into a copy of Access Code instead. Although the only time like it could have come up, I was sitting on like Pisty, LP, and then like other cards, so I couldn't have made Access Code in that situation, which is why I play the Boral Sword. But in that situation, I had already just like had game anyway. I didn't need to make the Boral Sword Dragon and get greedy, so I just kind of started like picking off my damage one by one. And yeah, that rounds out the extra. We'll get into the side for this one out of the ordinary. Okay, so yeah, we don't normally go through the side deck, but we will for this because it was a major event. You'll only really ever see side decks whenever it's like critically important to the way the deck functions or whenever it's a major event. So this is what we sided. We've sided the 3 copies of Nibiru. I do still, with Salamangreat Great being so like good at our current locals, like our very incredibly rude Salamangreat Great player, this card is still very, very important to have around because it just like shuts him down, and that's very fun. This also came in round 1 against the Evil Twin Eldritch player, where they only drew like Evil Twin stuff, and I was like, yeah, I'm holding a Nibiru, by the way. And then they got to their 5 summons, and I was like, yeah, cool, Nibiru time. After that, we then have 3 copies of Lancia. This is primarily for dinos because it can just end their turn. There are other decks at my current locals where this card is very good against, but this is mainly for Dino, which didn't actually come up, so it never really found its way into the main deck as the day went on. 3 copies of Forbidden Droplet. I felt like having some way of targeting negation, or non-targeting negation, / like defense or attack modification was good to have in a side deck. This did come in against Shadows to like get me through the winter, which was important. It did win me games, so like it was very, very good to have in a side deck. 2 copies of Cyclone and 1 Harpy's Feather Duster is what I then went with over Lightning Storm, just because I felt as though I do play like continuous and stuff that sits face up on board that would interact with our Lightning Storm in a negative way, so I went with just the Cosmic Cyclone and the Harpies. The Cosmic Cyclones put in big work against Shadow Schisms all day long. I did intend them to have other uses, but Schism was just what they pretty much just got used for. And then we have, of course, the 1 copy of Harpy's Feather Duster just to like blow through the back row and then like get us through for game. And then rounding out the last card we had in our side deck, it was 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. Whenever we went first, this card came in. And yeah, overall, put in decent work. Didn't put in like massive work, but it did its job. Okay, and that wraps up here for the deck profile for this one. This one has gone on a little bit long. Typically, like whenever we have like a major event, the profile that I do from it will be a little long, so bear with me on that one. Yeah, overall, I really, really love Dragonmaids at the moment. Like, it catches so many people by surprise. Like, when it starts to steamroll, it gets them, like, really caught off guard. So I really felt as though it was the correct choice for the event. I couldn't quite sneak out that one last win to get me through to the final. But, you know, that happens from time to time. I'll probably continue definitely playing this going forward. Especially with the new pot spell. Like, this deck becomes, like, another level of good because you don't have to worry about extra so much. But, yeah. Hit that like button down below if you did like this one. If you stayed till the end, thank you very much for staying till the end. But yeah, as always, I've been Ben from NolanTCG, and have a good afternoon, everybody.